The Wizard of Oz is one of the most iconic and celebrated films of all time. The song Over the Rainbow, Judy Garland's performance, the vibrant color in Oz after the sepia-tone first half. There are innumerable quotes, musical themes, and images that come from this movie which are immediately recognizable and which have permeated our collective cultural consciousness. And I actually don't really like it that much. Welcome to my Wizard of Oz review. First of all, if you've never seen The Wizard of Oz, wow, really? Who are you? No, actually, there's probably a lot of you who haven't seen it. It is an old movie after all. In about 15 years, it will be 100 years old. So, if you've never seen it, let's do a quick review of what happens. Spoiler alert, if an almost 100-year-old movie needs a spoiler alert. So, Dorothy Gale, played by Judy Garland, is a girl who lives with her aunt and uncle on a farm in Kansas. Also working on the farm are 3 farmhands. She doesn't really like it there and sings about wanting to be somewhere else. Somewhere over the rainbow. She also has a dog named Toto who likes to run off, chase the neighbor's cats, and apparently bite people. One day, it bites a neighboring lady named Elmira Gulch, and she shows up with a sheriff's order to take Dorothy's dog away. She has to take the dog that bit her herself? Does this place not have a dog catcher or something? Anyways, she takes Toto, but he escapes by just jumping out of the bicycle basket and then runs back home. So Dorothy takes Toto and decides to run away. She doesn't get very far before she meets a traveling fortune teller. He pretends to read her fortune. He has to pretend, because he's not a real fortune teller. They don't exist. They're all just charlatans. Anyways, this one is a good guy, or he just doesn't want her tagging along with him. Either way, he convinces her to go back to her family. But while she's heading back, a tornado picks up. All the people on the farm get down into the storm cellar and lock the door. But when Dorothy gets back to the farm, she can't get in there. So she goes into the house. But she gets knocked unconscious and falls on the bed. Then the tornado picks up the house and drops it in the land of Oz. Dorothy wakes up and walks outside into the magnificent Technicolor land of Oz, where she says this memorable line.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
She is greeted by Glinda the Good Witch of the North, who informs her her house has crushed the Wicked Witch of the East. Then all of the Munchkins of Munchkinland pop up and sing. Then the Wicked Witch of the West shows up and wants her sister's ruby slippers, but Glinda magically puts them on Dorothy. Then the Wicked Witch of the West utters this iconic line,
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too.
and disappears in a puff of smoke. Glinda then tells Dorothy to go find the Wizard of Oz, and he can help her get home. To get to the Emerald City where the wizard lives, she has to follow the yellow brick road. Cue another musical number. As she travels, she meets a scarecrow, a tin man, and a cowardly lion, who want a heart, a brain, and courage, respectively. They join her to go ask the wizard for these things. They get to the Emerald City, despite some setbacks, and then see the wizard, who looks like Zordon from the Power Rangers with a milk mustache. After insulting them for some reason, he says he'll give them the things they want if they prove themselves worthy by bringing him the Wicked Witch's broomstick. So they head off for the Wicked Witch's castle. But along the way, Dorothy and Toto are captured by flying monkeys and taken to the castle. But Toto escapes and meets up with Dorothy's 3 friends and shows them the way to the castle. They dress up as guards and get in and rescue Dorothy. But the witch finds out and chases them through the castle. When she catches them, she sets fire to the scarecrow. As Dorothy tries to put out the fire, she gets water on the witch, and she melts. Is this like a common issue with these witches? What do they do when it rains? Anyways, the guards are happy the witch is dead. They give Dorothy the broomstick, and Dorothy and her friends return to the Emerald City. But when they get back and see the wizard, he doesn't want to hold up his end of the bargain. Then Toto pulls back a curtain, and they realize that the wizard is just a dude. They're upset he can't give them a brain, courage, and a heart, but he says they already have them, and ends up giving them a diploma, a medal, and a testimonial, whatever that is. Then he tells them he also came from Kansas and arrived in Oz due to a freak hot air balloon accident. He offers to take Dorothy back to Kansas in his hot air balloon. But just before they take off, Toto sees a cat and runs off, and Dorothy gets out of the balloon to chase after him, and then the balloon takes off, so she's stuck in Oz again. But then Glinda shows up and tells her the ruby slippers have the power to take her back home. She taps her shoes, says,
There's no place like home.
And she wakes up in her bed. Psych! It was all a dream. And the people she knows at home were all the people in her dream. Except Glinda. And the Munchkins. And the flying monkeys. Anyways, that's the gist of the film. So, what works about this movie? Why is it so iconic and well remembered? Well, certainly the music works in its favor. The song Over the Rainbow is one of the most well-known pieces of original popular music, and Judy Garland's performance is simply amazing. A perfect example of an I want song, it conveys her character's current state and desires and foreshadows her upcoming adventure. Written by Harold Arlen, music, and Yip Harburg, lyrics, it won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The other songs are also fairly well known, from Ding Dong the Witch is Dead and We're Off to See the Wizard, to the multi-use If I Only Had a Brain, Heart, Nerve song for each of her three companions. The musical score for the film also won the Academy Award for Best Original Score and features instrumental portions of the various themes, as well as snippets of other pieces here and there, including some classical pieces and a few earlier popular songs. Overall, the songs and score of the film are one of its strongest features. However, there are shortcomings even in this area, but we'll discuss that later. The use of color is also very memorable. Although not the first color movie by a long shot, the fact that it starts in sepia tone and then switches to color when Dorothy gets to Oz is a great technique and helps the viewer feel that they've entered a magical world after leaving our normal, mundane world. The bright ruby red slippers, along with the bright yellow brick road and colorful green of Emerald City, all showcase the beautiful colors and feeling of brightness and joy. The acting is a positive point as well. Judy Garland, despite being a bit old to play Dorothy, does a great job. She sings wonderfully, but is also believable in the more dramatic parts. But the best acting goes to her three friends in Oz. Ray Bolger is excellent as the Scarecrow, his physicality definitely up to the task of the wobbly, floppy movements of a living Scarecrow. Jack Haley replaced Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man after the latter suffered an allergic reaction to the makeup. He does a good job as well and also utilizes his physicality a bit in some dance sequences. And Burt Lahr also does a great job as the Cowardly Lion and brings a lot of humor to the character and the film. The performance of Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch of the West is also very iconic and another high point of the film. Frank Morgan plays Professor Marvel, the fortune teller, as well as the Wizard of Oz, and his characters are humorous and enjoyable. He also plays several other characters in Oz, though I'm not sure why. Did they want to save on money or something? Anyways, the story is another positive point. It has humor, music, and heart. It is a true fantasy with magic, witches, and flying monkeys, but is also grounded in real emotions. It conveys this feeling that almost all of us have had, that we want to be elsewhere and do something more. All of us want at some point to escape our mundane, colorless lives and go on an adventure or travel somewhere fantastic. And this film, as many other good films do, acts as a vehicle for this escape, allowing us to escape for a while to this magical land. But the film also helps us to realize that ultimately, there truly is no place like home, and reminds us that no matter what might be going on in our lives, often the best place for us to be is with those people we love and who love us. The journey that Dorothy's three friends go on in Oz also reflects this idea. They each wanted something else for themselves, only to find, after going on an adventure, that they had it all along. Just like the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion already had their brain, heart, and courage, respectively, Dorothy realized her Over the Rainbow was actually home. So, there are a lot of reasons that this film was and still is so well received, and why it has become a part of our cultural consciousness. However, that doesn't mean that all of it works. And I believe there are multiple aspects that bring down this movie and make it, in my opinion, not as great as it is generally believed to be. I'll start first with the music, as this is a channel dedicated to discussions of music. Of course, there are great songs in this film, as I mentioned earlier. However, there are also some misses. As I recently mentioned, Dorothy realized at the end of the film that although she had made it over the rainbow and getting to Oz, she actually wants to get back home. Ultimately, home is her Over the Rainbow, and at the end of the film, there should have been a reprise of the song Over the Rainbow. Apparently, a reprise of the song was planned for when Dorothy was trapped in the witch's castle, but it was cut. But even if this had been left in, it's still not the ideal place for it. Of course she's sad and wants to come home when she's locked up. It would fit much better right after she misses the balloon. You see, she's in Oz, surrounded by her friends after completing a successful adventure. She should be happy, but all she really wants is to be back home. And a reprise of Over the Rainbow here would really drive home this idea that truly the best place to be, despite everything, is home with family. A reprise here would also improve this ending section where she's heartbroken at missing the balloon, and it should be an emotional moment, but it's suddenly undercut when Glinda shows up with the answer. It's like, oh no, she's stuck here, what is she going to... Oh, never mind, it's solved. I think it's too fast a solution and gives you a bit of whiplash. If there were a reprise here, it would give the viewer a bit more time for the conflict to linger. Not a lot, it's still the end of the movie, and the main conflict has already been solved, but just a bit longer would help. Overall, Over the Rainbow should have been reprised, and it should have been reprised here at the end. Another issue I have with the music is the entire Munchkinland sequence. There are several short musical segments here, none of which, besides Ding Dong the Witch is Dead, are really complete songs. They all have simple melodies and truncated lyrics that don't go anywhere, and they don't really do anything for the story. So what if the Lollipop Guild and Lullaby League welcome her to Munchkinland? And are these the only two civic organizations in Munchkinland? Overall, I don't feel like these songs are very good, or add anything to the plot, the characters, or the magical feeling of Oz. There's also the song titled Optimistic Voices, which is a very short song sung by a chorus and heard in the background right after the trio and Dorothy make it out of the poppy field. This song is also very limited in length and impact. It's further diminished because the movie cuts to the Wicked Witch briefly in the middle of the song. It's just strange and doesn't seem necessary. I also don't understand the song If I Were King of the Forest. What is this song and why is it here? It doesn't really give us any insight into the Cowardly Lion. And if he needs his own song, why don't the Tin Man and Scarecrow get their own separate song? I don't think it's a very good song in and of itself, and it doesn't seem to do anything to move the plot or give additional insight into the Cowardly Lion's character. An issue that is somewhat related to the music regards one of the songs that was cut, the Jitterbug. I don't disagree with the reason it was cut, but they left in the line where the witch says,
I've sent a little insect on ahead to take the fight out of them.
because they cut the song, that line goes nowhere. They should have cut it out, but because they didn't, it's just a weird line that doesn't make any sense unless you've got additional behind-the-scenes information. In addition to some of the musical missteps, there are also some story aspects that don't quite land. For example, the fact that the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion still need to be given something even though they discovered they already had it in them all along is weird. Also, throughout the movie, it's pretty clear that the Scarecrow does have brains, as he is pretty clever in some places, but the Lion is actually cowardly for most of the movie. Even when he gets brave enough to help rescue Dorothy, it's certainly not the same level as the Scarecrow's intelligence. Also, at the beginning of the film, Elmira Gulch is portrayed as the bad guy, who's a terrible person for taking Dorothy's dog. But honestly, I agree with her. Dorothy doesn't watch her dog or keep it on a leash, and it bites someone. That dog should be taken away. Sorry, I've got no sympathy for Dorothy or Toto, and don't think Elmira Gulch should be the bad guy here. Also, at the end of the movie, Dorothy's happy to be back home, and everyone else is happy she's okay, and so it seems like a happy ending. But is it? What happened to Elmira Gulch? She's still coming after Toto, and as I said, so she should. So the happy ending is a lie, because Toto's still gonna die. Also, why is the end back to sepia tone? As we've mentioned, Over the Rainbow for Dorothy at the end of the film is home. So when she gets back there, it shouldn't be colorless and drab as it felt for her at the beginning. It should be colorful and vibrant. She's happy she's back home, and it should be reflected in the color.
There's no place like home.
In addition to music and story problems, I also think that the special effects and art direction are really tacky and poorly done. I know that walk from the sepia tone house into Oz is really memorable, and the color change works well, but I just feel like Oz looks super fake. Because it is. It's just a studio backlot. Look at the hills. It's tacky. Now, what if they had filmed this on location somewhere? That could have looked great. Remember that shot of Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music? Something like that. Now, maybe Europe would have been prohibitively expensive, or they were worried Hitler would annex Oz or something, but there are plenty of beautiful places in California where they could have filmed. And unlike The Adventures of Robin Hood, where, unsurprisingly, Northern California wasn't a very convincing stand-in for England, Oz is a fantasy land, so it could look like whatever and it wouldn't matter. Anyways, all of Oz just looks cheap and tacky. It's really noticeable that it's all done on the MGM studio lot. Don't run into that wall there, Dorothy. The rest of the special effects aren't great either, but a lot of that is just the fact that special effects back then weren't as good as later on. Overall, this film is iconic and well-known and oft-quoted and everything else, but I really feel like, despite the things that work, there are too many missteps that drag it down and really keep it from being as good as everyone thinks it is. And it's perhaps worth mentioning here that when it first came out, it was not heralded as an amazing movie immediately. Some people thought it was great, but others did not, and it actually lost money initially. It wasn't until subsequent re-releases that it ended up making a profit. Overall, I can recognize the film's good points, and I understand how and why it became such a classic and a part of our cultural consciousness. But at the same time, I don't think it is quite as good as it is often made out to be. Let me know what you think. If you agree, or think I'm a total idiot, just let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.